the 50-60% tariff that has been proposed by the Trump campaign. Do you see that as a strategic move?
You see, Trump is a bully. Okay, he's always been a bully. These tariffs, Trump has essentially unleashed a trade war on the entire world. Trump complains that India is supporting the Russian war effort by purchasing Russian oil. Well, China is purchasing much more Russian oil than us. Europe is purchasing Russian energy, Russian gas. That doesn't matter. Complete double standard, but that's how it goes. And there is the threat by Senator Zelensky that there's going to pass a bill which will make it 500%. Any country that supports the Russian war effort, they have to pay 500% tariffs. That's all.
Is India demonstrating strength if it is being unsustainable for this balancing act?
Is India demonstrating strength? I mean, India is the one country that's standing up to Trump. That demonstrates a tremendous amount of fortitude and strength and resilience and spine. Everybody else is caved in. What is the India issue? Well, why is he so hell bent on squeezing India? Well, one of the things is what happened in May.
Geopolitics teaches us one thing clear. Hidden cracks in any system eventually show up, whether it's global alliances, trade relations, or national security. Ignoring the small signs today can lead to much bigger costs tomorrow. The same holds true when it comes to your new home. Tiles begin to break, bathrooms start leaking, walls show dampness, and faulty wiring turns into a silent threat. By the time you notice, the damage is already done. Fixing these issues later means higher costs and double the stress. Just like repairing broken trust in international relations is far harder than building it right the first time. That's why with every new home, you need Housypoint home inspection. Their experts conduct a detailed scan so your home is not just good to look at but safe and strong to live in. In geopolitics, foresight and preparation decide the future. For your home, Housypoint does the same, ensuring the foundation is secure and the story ahead remains stable.
Welcome to the show, Abhijit sir.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you again. And for today's discussion, I really want to deep dive into the complex US-India relationships that have been formed up. All credits to the announcement of the steep tariffs given by the Trump campaign. Right? And I want to begin this from the very beginning, that from a historical perspective, if you see the relationship that was between India and US from the timings of Nehru to Indira Gandhi, to the other leaders that have existed, both in India and in US, we are always at a place where India was always given a sideline when it comes to the relationship that India-US, and they always wanted to support Pakistan. So starting from that, taking that historical perspective into picture, how would you see this?
Okay, let's deal with it historically first. See, India is not an ordinary nation. I think we Indians don't understand that. We are a very different nation from other nations. We are a gigantic subcontinent-sized nation. We matter. We are a huge nation. Whether we realize it or not, we matter because we are such a big landmass and a big population. And if we take certain actions, it can change the destiny of Asia and the world. And the US has always recognized this from the very beginning. So when India got its dominion status in 1947, and in the 1950 or wherever it was, we became a republic. So the US initially wanted India to be on their side. So they offered India multiple times to make India a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Okay, this was offered to India on multiple occasions, not just by the US, also by the USSR. But as historical records show us, India refused multiple times, over and over again. And our leader, the great, magnificent Mr. Nehru, he said that you need to give preference to China first, for whatever reason. It's like he was advocating for China. So China became eventually the fifth permanent member of the UN Security Council. India remained an outsider. And Mr. Nehru took another fateful decision at the time that he would align with the USSR. He spent a lot of time in the UK, in England, studying there. And he was a Fabian socialist by nature. By inclination. Fabian socialism is very slow, gradual, gentle change in society towards in the right direction. So he was a huge fan of the USSR. He was a Fabian socialist, and he chose to go down the socialist road. He chose to align with the USSR, but he did not replicate the USSR's monstrous industrialization, which made the USSR a superpower. He decided to go it in an incremental way. So that's the Nehruvian rate of growth: 3%, 4%, 3%, 2% per year. That's what we suffered. So because he aligned with the USSR, and the US wanted to have some kind of foothold in the subcontinent region, and because they have a lot of geopolitical interest in the region, that's why they decided to align with Pakistan to make Pakistan what we call a wasa.
Way to China.
Well, China comes in later. Eventually, China does come in. So let me explain. So and Pakistan was anyway an artificially created nation. It was created to serve the geopolitical objectives of the UK, because the UK used to be a big geopolitical player, and they had significant interests in the Gulf region, and they also wanted to have influence and power in the subcontinent region even after they left. So that's why Pakistan was created, a garrison state, a mercenary state that would align with the UK. Now, after the UK became a second-rate world power around 1957, the 56 Suez Crisis, that's where the US steps in. And they have these agreements with Pakistan, strategic agreements, SEATO, CENTO, all of that, whatever it's called, and they align Pakistan with themselves. So that gave them leverage in this region, not only in the Gulf region, but also in the subcontinent region. And India was, by the 1950s, 60s, very strongly aligned with the USSR. So that's why the US eventually turned hostile towards India. They would have wanted India to be on their side. They tried for that, but it did not work out because of our leadership having different ideas and plans. So Pakistan becomes a US asset in the region, and there's a 65 war in which they support Pakistan. At the time, Iran was also an American vassal, so to say. The Shah was a US asset. And when Pakistan suffered from setbacks, they flew all their fighter planes to Iran for safekeeping, that sort of thing. Then, during Mrs. Indira Gandhi's time, once again we were aligned with the USSR. And you know what happened in 71. The US supported Pakistan's genocide in East Pakistan, the Bangladesh issue. And they sent a couple of aircraft carriers task forces to India, to the Bay of Bengal, a British task force and an American task force, the USS Enterprise. And the objective was to arm this India, to bully India into not intervening in the Pakistani genocide in East Pakistan. But the USSR sent a submarine fleet, a nuclear submarine fleet. So that evened things out, and India was able to achieve what we achieved in 1971. So historically, during the first Cold War of the 20th century, we were aligned with the USSR. And that's why the US naturally took the side of Pakistan. They needed an asset in the region. After 71, they created a base in Diego Garcia, because they realized they did not have enough power projection capabilities in the Indian Ocean region. So they took over the Chagos Islands from the UK, created a big naval and air force base in Diego Garcia, from which they can project power over India if required. Right? So that's all the 20th century.
Regarding that, there has been a declassification of cables from 1971 from Nixon White House and even Kissinger calling Indira Gandhi a bitch, a witch, and this is official records that suggest that. Do you think there was a moment being created to create this cultural, effect on India to not grow at the global south scale which it could have?
Look, Mr. Nehru himself created the conditions for that. Okay, his policies were those of incrementalism. That's why what the West pejoratively called the Hindu rate of growth, which is like 2 or 3% per year, it's actually the Nehruvian rate of growth. And much of the same continued in the subsequent governments, whether it is Mr. Shastri or Mrs. Gandhi. So it was not a Western imposed thing to contain India. We ourselves, our leaders themselves, created the situation, the circumstances where our growth was very stunted, right? And of course, the US recognized this from the very beginning, that if India achieved its potential, it could surpass what Japan had become. Japan became a huge threat for the US and the West during the Second World War time period, because it emerged as a major power, even though it's just a small chain of islands, comparatively speaking. So if India went down the same road of industrialization and becoming powerful, then India would be a whole different beast. And they realized that. And it was very fortunate for them that we had leaders who went for the path of incrementalism. So they did not really have to contain India, but they did cultivate Pakistan in East and West Pakistan as assets to keep India as and when required off balance and kind of contained. Then 71 happened, and Bangladesh becomes an independent country. But very soon there's a coup in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his family are assassinated, most of them. His daughter was somewhere else, that's why she survived, Sheikh Hasina. And once again, Bangladesh becomes kind of a Western asset.
How do you see the factor here of USSR coming in response to the US ships that had been released back then? Because USSR was all equipped in the way of them all with the nuclear arsenals. How was this move politically or diplomatically safe? What do you feel about that?
It was seen by the US as a hostile action, but it was a natural, it was a logical action. Because, see, India and the USSR were very strongly aligned. And if India suffered setbacks geopolitically, diplomatically, militarily, or whatever, it would be bad for the USSR. And that's why to ensure that this doesn't happen, they sent the submarine fleet to the Bay of Bengal to ensure that India is able to achieve its objectives in East Pakistan, because that gives the USSR an advantage. So it's all the geopolitical chessboard which was being played on, and that's how it went. So obviously in the West, this was seen as a hostile action, what the USSR did. That they allowed India to bifurcate Pakistan, vivisect Pakistan, and so on. But the US was very well aware of what was happening in East Pakistan at the time, the genocide. They were aware of it. There's the book called The Blood Telegram. Everything is laid out in black and white over there. So the Americans knew what was happening, and they were fine with that. It's not a one-time thing that the Americans have done, that they condone, they allow genocide to happen. It's like a pattern for them. They always prefer regimes that are dictatorial and authoritarian in nature. They give you lectures about democracy and freedom and human rights, but the regimes they prop up have historically, since the 20th century, been those of dictators. Even today, you will see that in Syria, a former Al-Qaeda terrorist, Al-Julani or whatever his name is now apparently the president of Syria, right? He had a $10 million bounty on his head by the US. And now Trump meets with him. So that's the game US plays, and they understand that, you've got to play the game of power. So that was the situation between India and the US in the 20th century. Then in the 1990s, the early 90s, 91, around that time, the USSR crumbles and collapses and disintegrates. And the Indian politicians and the Indian government is left without a big daddy. Now what do we do? So that's when, because we are anyway so anglicized and many of us are Anglophiles, and we have many of our leaders have apparently relatives and all whatnot living in the West. That's why it was not that difficult for us to start tilting westwards. So the USSR disintegrates. Russia was a broken economy very soon. Okay, Yeltsin mismanaged everything. He burnt away the nation's savings and all that. And Russia suffered lots of setbacks at the time. The Chechnya War, the first Chechnya War, they lost, and they were not in control of their own territory. That sort of thing. So Russia was on shaky ground, and Russia was in no position to act as a more powerful nation that will support India. So India was left adrift. That's why India started slowly tilting towards the west, towards the US. And during the time of the Bush regime, the George W. Bush Jr. regime, that's when India and the US reached this nuclear agreement, the 123 agreement, or whatever it's called, during the time of Dr. Manmohan Singh and Mr. George W. Bush. And that's where you can see that India and the US start aligning. And from that time onwards until like 6 months ago, India and the US were on more and more convergent trajectories. So that's been the deal. So from 91 onwards, there's been this slow alignment between India and the US. From 2002 or 2004 onwards, there's been a much greater convergence between India and the US. And India has been purchasing US weapons, and there's a lot of synergy. Not a lot of synergy, but a certain amount of synergy that's been built up between the two nations.
I want to circle back a little bit on the Nixon and Kissinger use of words in a very harsh way to Indira Gandhi. These words were ugly, but the strategy was logical from their moral perspective. Where it's impact.
It's not a moral strategy. There's nothing moral about it. There's no morality in geopolitics. Why were those words used? Because Mrs. Gandhi was actually standing up for her country. No, I don't know to comment about her economic policies or whatever. That's a different matter. But when it came to national security, she was pretty pretty much a hawk. Okay, and she was on the verge eventually. I'm not sure when these words were spoken. Was it during the vivisection of Pakistan? Was it before it? But the Americans could see that India is going in the direction where it would be very bad for Pakistan. So that's why, and Mrs. Gandhi was not pliable. She was not willing to toe the American line. So obviously there was a tremendous amount of displeasure towards her from the Nixon Kissinger, regime. The Kissinger was their Secretary of State. He was a German-born person, but he became a naturalized U.S. citizen, and Nixon was the president. And those two had a significant amount of hatred for Indians and for Mrs. Gandhi. And that the reason for that could perhaps be a racist thing, maybe a racist angle towards us, and maybe also because India was aligned against us.
They used to call Indians like goddamn people.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nixon and Kissinger.
That's all right. That's how it goes. So we shouldn't be surprised by this. Look, racism exists in the world. Racism exists in every country, I suppose. All right. So today, racism is a taboo topic. We don't talk about it in white supremacy and all that nonsense. But racism exists, and they've always been racist towards us. It's the consequence of the past 500 years of European supremacy, when they've destroyed all civilizations. So they believe that they are superior, and that's why when India, a nation like India, which was totally obliterated by the UK, suddenly starts rising up on its feet again and taking actions that are global geopolitical consequences, they're going to be really upset about that. And that could explain possibly
To the current FTA.
I'm talking about 1971.
And even Abhijit, so one more thing, I want to go towards the 1990 liberalization effect.
Yeah.
During that time, well, India's liberalization seemed to be transitioning in India in this relation more from a diplomatic stand towards an economical standpoint. How do you see that?
Yeah, so what happened is that our economy was in tatters at the time. We were on the verge of defaulting and so many things. Our foreign exchange reserves were enough to last a week or so, right? So we were in a very bad situation, and we were forced to go to the World Bank and the whatever International Monetary Fund or whatever it was, and ask for bailout. So they were happy to give us a bailout or whatever it was, but the conditions were very stringent. You're gonna open up your economy to the West. You're going to have Western companies come into your country and invest. All of that was not allowed before. So, you see, the World Bank and the IMF, they are very interesting entities. They will give loans to countries, but the loans come with all kinds of strings attached. They will essentially decide how you're going to use the money. You can't use the money the way you want. They will tell you that we will give you this much, let's say $1 billion. But they will tell you exactly how you can use it and how you can't use it. And they will ask you to change things internally. So if you do business this way, no, you can no longer do business this way. Now you have to completely transform your system. That's the kind of deal it is. It's like a bargain with the devil, right? So anyway, it was good for India from a certain perspective that we finally opened up our country to the world. See, I was born in the 1970s, okay? So I have seen a different India from what you people have ever seen. India back then was a very different country. See, I spent some time in Europe as a kid. When I came back to India, it was like coming back to North Korea. Not in the sense that it was a dictatorship. India was a very free country, people were very nice and all, but you had no idea what was happening outside of India in the rest of the world. You had one TV channel which would telecast like 4 or 5 hours a day. Okay, there would be this news program in the evening in which half the time they'll talk about which minister said what. And there's no information about what's happening outside of India. It's like you're completely isolated from the rest of the world. That's how the Indian citizenry was kept. So after 91, suddenly you have foreign channels coming into India, you have satellite TV, cable TV, all of that. And suddenly the world opens up to you. So that's the kind of transformation that happened. It was great for the people. We finally got to see what is happening outside of the country. But India's economy and India's system got slowly infiltrated by the West. Okay, it's been a creeping infiltration, but it got infiltrated. And that was the thing. So 91 was that sort of situation. That India was forced to open up its economy and liberalize the economy. It was good. It set India off on a different trajectory. India's growth suddenly started because of all of this. A lot of the red tape, a lot of the socialism was made to go away. So it was good for the Indian economy. It kickstarted India's economy, which had never happened since 1957. So it was like a double-edged sword. It also brought in the infiltration of the Indian system by the West, and that is a very big issue.
President Trump's first time. How do you see the ties strategically that were being developed between India and the US? Right, because this was the time when economic trade was being discussed between the two countries. But again, it was filled with tariff threats. It was filled with other kind of India protectionism kind of perspective, right? How do you see this?
Right. So when Mr. Trump first came to power, it was like a big surprise for the US and for the world. So he comes to power, and you see, if you look at Mr. Trump's first term as the 45th president, he achieved very little of note. He was an outsider in the American political system. The American political system saw him as an outsider. They did not like him. They did not trust him. And both parties in the US kind of conspired to prevent him from getting anything done. He wanted to, his greatest dream was to build a wall with Mexico. Well, that never happened. And he was impeached, and he faced roadblock and hurdle after roadblock and hurdle. So he did not really achieve anything of note. And during this period of time, India-US relationship essentially continued on autopilot. So the US foreign policy, to a large extent, is set, it's decided, it is orchestrated by the defense establishment and the State Department, which is a bunch of bureaucrats. The defense establishment is the Pentagon, which is a whole bunch of unelected bureaucrats. No matter who's president, they will stay. And once again, State Department is like that. So the India-US relationship continued on autopilot mostly. And so Trump did have some influence on that, but not a lot. So because he was so hamstrung, he was not able to get anything done. So that's how the relationship went fine. He did complain a lot about India. Harley Davidson, India imposes huge tariffs on Harley Davidson and whatnot. He kept complaining. But at that time, he had a good relationship with Prime Minister Modi. But even during the Biden administration, there were issues. The Ukraine war started and India refused to join the Western sanctions on Russia. So there were issues, but overall the Biden regime saw the relationship as important from a perspective of containing China or whatever, and they kept the relationship on an okay track. There was an attempt to probably influence the 2024 election in India, and the Biden administration did carry out a regime change operation in East Pakistan, which is Bangladesh. They ousted Sheikh Hasina and put in a puppet military government. They also started Operation Project Kill Cookie Land for Christ, which is the whole Manipur situation, which is all orchestrated from there. I assure you of that. So the Biden regime did do a lot of damage to India-US relations, but overall, it was not to the level that it is now. So then when Mr. Trump comes to power as the 47th president, like lots of Indians over here, right-wing Indians, were celebrating, Trump is here, India-US relations will go to the zenith. Well,
tariff proposal, the 50-60% tariff that has been proposed by the Trump campaign. How do you see that? Do you see that as a strategic move or a blunt negotiating tactics?
You see, Trump is a bully. Okay, he's always been a bully. And now I understand Trump probably better than a lot of people today because I watched his TV series called The Apprentice. If you watch it aired in the early 2000s.
It's no longer available.
I suppose it's no longer available, but I remember watching it. Okay, I watched the first couple of seasons, the first 2-3 seasons. If you watch that, you will understand what kind of person Trump is. Okay, so these tariffs, Trump has essentially unleashed a trade war on the entire world. It's not just India; it's all the countries of the world. He's imposing various tariffs based on what his perception of the relationship is. So the World Trade Organization, all of that has completely been sidelined. What he's doing is completely against the rules of the WTO, but it doesn't matter. He's President Trump, right? So he can do whatever he wants. So he's imposing tariffs selectively on various countries. So Pakistan 19%, India 50%, other countries some other percentage. The Japanese, I don't know what the percentage is, but Japan has now been asked to invest about $500 billion worth of money in American industries because Japan is a captive country. And very onerous terms on Indonesia as well. Now, when it comes to India, Trump complains that India is supporting the Russian war effort by purchasing Russian oil. Well, China is purchasing much more Russian oil than us. Europe is purchasing Russian energy, Russian gas. That doesn't matter. Complete double standards, but that's how it works. So he first imposed 25% tariffs on us and then imposed an additional slab of 25%, which makes it 50% now. And there is the threat by Senator McConnell or whatever his name is, Lindsey Graham. So Lindsey Graham, that they're gonna pass a bill which will make it 500%. Any country that supports the Russian war effort, they have to pay 500% tariffs. That's out there. So that is also a sword that's dangling over the relationship right now.
And how do you think India's growing SME sector can be affected by this kind of external shock that you were recently doing?
Right, so it could, it certainly will have an impact. See, first of all, let's understand how tariffs work. What is a tariff? Let's say I am a guy who's imposing tariffs on somebody, on you, okay? You are country A, I am country B. Now, if you want to sell your stuff to me, to my market, I'm going to impose, let's say, 50% tariffs on you. What it means is that when you sell, let's say, $1 million worth of goods to one of my companies, okay, and a company that's in my country, then the buyer who's buying from you, let's say it should have been $1 million, now he's going to have to pay 50% tariffs to my government. So you're not paying it, your importer is paying it, the guy you're selling to, but now because it is, so instead of $1 million, which he already paid you, now the moment he receives the goods, he has to pay another $500,000 to the government, my government. Which means that it is like highly unfeasible, and it doesn't make sense for him to keep importing from you. So eventually he will stop importing from you, and that's how it's gonna hit you, right? So if two countries have a trade relationship and one country imposes huge tariffs, it means the trade relationship will break down. That's what it means.
Could this also force a painful reorientation of the way Indian economy will function now?
It will, because it's gonna, like you said, affect the SME sectors, or all the sectors, whoever is exporting to the US. It's going to affect them all. And because of that, we're going to have to reorient our economy. Maybe no longer export to the US. If this continue. See, first of all, we have to understand that Trump is going to be around for another 3.5 years. After him, maybe things will change. Maybe they won't change. Maybe it will be worse. Maybe it will be better. We don't know. We can't keep guessing. So right now, we have to reorient the economy and look for other trading partners. And that's why it looks like there are talks between India and China of some kind.
But only you think US is the biggest consumer of every good that exists?
That is why they have so much leverage. That's why they have so much leverage. See, they are the biggest consumer market in the world. They are the market with the deepest pockets. Everybody wants to export to the US. And by denying access to the market, they're going to, that is the thing, right? That's what will hit your economy. And that's what will bring your GDP growth rate lower. So I don't know what the estimates are. Maybe it's RBI had said that next year, India's economy is projected to grow at, let's say, 6.5%. Okay. But these Trump tariffs, they may bring it down to about 6.1% or even 6%. So there could be a significant hit to the Indian GDP growth rate because of what Trump is doing. And if he imposes even higher tariffs, like 500% tariffs, then it's essentially the end of the relationship. So that's what he's doing.
Yeah. With that being said, from India's perspective, does this undermine American moral authority on economic workers?
Look, America has never had any moral authority or anything. The authority they've had is the authority of brute force. So they are the global hegemon. They have unlimited power projection capability. They are the only superpower, which means the only nation with the ability to intervene anywhere militarily on the planet at about 60 minutes notice. They have more than 700 extraterritorial military bases across the world. That's what gives them the authority to dictate what happens. They have never had any moral authority. Everybody knows the US hypocrisy. On the one hand, they will give you lectures about human rights and democracy. On the other hand, they will do regime change operations. They will do coups. They will support dictators. They will support Pakistan. The US funded and financed Pakistani terrorism for decades against India, since Christmas Day 1979, essentially. Okay? The US funded and financed the Pakistani terrorism in Kashmir, the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. I think you will know about that. That's all US funded. And today they give lectures to the world. So the entire world knows the US double standards and hypocrisy. But when you are the biggest bully in town, there's not much you can do about that.
And given this potential shift of US trade with India, does that mean that India's trade with other countries like UAE, South Africa, Southeast Asia would be more critical to avoid?
It's going to be very important. It's going to be critical that we very rapidly pivot to other countries. In case, we already have excellent relationships, trading relationships with various EU nations, with the Gulf nations, very friendly relations with them, with Southeast Asia. The one huge nation that we don't have a relationship with is China, right? China is a big market, but the problem is that China is not an importing market. They are an exporter. They are the world's biggest manufacturer. They export, and that's how they build their economy. So what kind of relationship can we have with China? We have France. We have so many countries. We have Brazil. We have all the BRICS nations. So we're going to have to very quickly repivot and explore whatever we can do with all these nations, because it's critical, because the US doesn't want to play ball.
Yeah. But in a world dividing into blocs, is India demonstrating strength if it is being unsustainable for this balancing act?
Look, the balancing act is going to be painful, but it's definitely sustaining. Is India demonstrating strength? I mean, India is the one country that's standing up to Trump. That demonstrates a tremendous amount of fortitude and strength and resilience and spine. Everybody else has caved in to Trump. The Europeans have caved in. Trump had the European leaders trotted out, and he made them sit in front of him, and he's sitting at the desk in the Oval Office, and they're all sitting like obedient students. He has turned them into they are his vassals anyway. So they have all caved in. They will do whatever the US says, whether it's Japan, whether it's Indonesia, whether other nations, these smaller nations with less power, they've all caved in. They have no choice. But India has stood firm. India is standing firm, and we are not going to cave into the US demands. So that tells you that India is definitely demonstrating strength. Of course, there's going to be a cost. Now the question is, why do this? Why not just agree to whatever Trump says? Right? Well, you know what that does? It means that he decides what are his demands. We have noticed in that. His demands essentially are that we open up the entire Indian economy to US companies dumping stuff over here.
Free market system.
Free market, 0% tariffs to whatever they want to sell to us, which means it destroys our industries. Because now we're going to have goods from the US coming in, which probably will be superior quality, no question. But if you allow that to happen, then nobody in India will anymore buy Indian goods, which destroys the local manufacturing economy, which we want to grow actually. And there's problems with agriculture as well. See, 50% of our population depends on agriculture. Now, if you have American agricultural products coming into India, 0% tariffs, it's going to destroy Indian agriculture as well. They're going to have GMO products, which are like genetically modified things, which are going to ruin people's health over here. If you see the US, most of them are obese. Most of them are unhealthy. They all pop pills every day. We don't do that because we are healthy. We may be still a poor nation, but at least we are healthy. The moment you have that coming in, the moment you have their dairy products coming in.
You agree to that when you said the poor nation word?
Yeah.
The whole idea of being a Vishwaguru at the moment.
That is nonsense.
Flawed. Like.
We are a Vishwakuli right now. We are not a Vishwaguru. What does it mean to be a Vishwaguru? It means that we are the world's, a Vishwaguru nation is the world's biggest exporter of knowledge and wisdom. Are we that today? What knowledge do we produce today? Look at our educational institutions rotten with the core. Look at the quality of our professors. I'm not saying they're all rotten.
Even the jobs. You go to tier 2 cities like Bihar and some districts in UP, you would notice that.
See, we were Vishwaguru 1,000 years ago. Between 1080 and today, we are not Vishwaguru. And today we are nowhere close to being Vishwaguru. We need to shut the hell up about this Vishwaguru nonsense and spend the next 50 years logging. Yeah. We are nowhere close to being Vishwaguru. Not even in the imagination right now.
You've spoken a lot about, even in this conversation and previously also, that we should not accept to be a small ally like other Western countries are of US. With that being said, isn't it going to create a very punitive kind of situation for India, US, where Trump could be more cruel than we all could ever imagine?
It will. Trump is very annoyed. See, Trump is very annoyed. He's taken it personally. The India issue. What is the India issue? And why is he so hell-bent on squeezing India? Well, one of the things is what happened in May. Operation Sindhu, the 3-day war with Pakistan. Okay, so we hit apparently some US assets in Pakistan. Apparently the Noor Kha Air Base was operated by Americans. Pakistanis were not even allowed inside. And it looks like they hit some very sensitive assets of the US. They have F-16s in Pakistan. And for each F-16, there's US technical personnel who are there who will not let the aircraft out of their sight 24/7. That's how it is. So if we hit some F-16s there, it may have hit some US personnel. Secondly, I am convinced, I don't have the evidence to back it up, but I am convinced that the Pakistani nuclear arsenal is actually US nuclear warheads on loan.
Why?
And if we hit their storage facility in Kirana Hills, it means we must have destroyed a few American nuclear warheads that are sitting in Pakistan. So because of these things, the Americans are already angry. Then Trump said that I intervened and I negotiated the ceasefire and I made the conclusion.
Which is denied by both the countries.
No, the Pakistanis are nominating him for a Nobel Prize. They're saying that yes, you ended the war. India is saying that you had nothing to do with it. That's why he's taking it very personally. So when it comes to this situation, it's going to be a painful time for India. Trump is going to squeeze India significantly. Okay? But the option is we either become a US lapdog, a vassal, or we show some spine and spend spend the next 20, 25 years slogging really hard with no support and really stand up as a country, then we can think of becoming a Vishwaguru.
Who will we export to them?
We'll have to find ways of doing it. See, there are lots of countries in the world. The EU is a big market. The Americans may even stop the EU.
But the current situation of Europe, you see, right?
Yeah.
The way their economy is functioning. Don't
Yes.
you think it's one of your bad decisions?
So there are multiple things we can do. One is we become a manufacturing power and we export and we earn cash in return. Foreign exchange, all that. That's one. But let's say that's not possible. Then we have to become a consumption-driven economy and we manufacture for ourselves, and that's how the GDP grows. Right? That's also another thing. But for that, you'll have to improve living standards. You'll have to improve the salaries of the people, because it's only then that you can consume more. So we're gonna need big reforms for that to happen, right? And reforms are a big issue in India. How do you make big reforms? What's the biggest issue in India today? No one wants to speak about it. It's corruption.
Right.
Corruption is the biggest problem that hampers everything in India. Well, not to the extent top of India. So the US is the most corrupt country in the world. Let me tell you why. Let me give you an example. You've been in the US.
No.
You haven't been in the US. If you go to the US, there's a rite of passage in the US when you're growing up. That rite of passage is you do drugs. You may do marijuana. It's just a weed. Or you may do harder drugs. In the US, every single person has at some point in time done drugs. A lot of people are doing drugs right now.
Yeah.
Now, if you are the world's most powerful country with the greatest law enforcement agencies in the world, how on earth are drugs available to anybody who wants it on demand? It means that it's done on purpose. This is corruption. There are many other examples of corruption I can give you. The US is probably the most corrupt country in the world, but the corruption doesn't affect the citizens. It doesn't affect the economy. It doesn't affect the citizens. Corruption is done at different levels. In India, corruption affects every single person on the street. That's how different it is. In India, it's different. Over there, it's different. In India, corruption victimizes the ordinary citizen. In the US, the corruption, it benefits some super rich people and entities, but it doesn't victimize the ordinary people. That's a different form of corruption. So in India, you have corruption that slows everything down, that grinds people to dust, that makes your infrastructure crumble, and so much more. So unless we fix that, we're not going to be that economy that can be driven by consumption within. So we're going to need reforms for that. We're going to need a war on corruption for that to happen. It's certainly feasible, but I don't see it happening rather soon. Yeah. So we have some hard choices ahead of us. All the solutions are there. Some are easy solutions. If those are not fructified, we're going to have very hard solutions. But solutions are there. So it's going to all depend on the leadership at the end of the day. How strong is our leadership? How much can they push through? What kind of pain are they willing to take? And how much pain are they willing to have India take on? But so the next couple of decades are going to be pretty tough for India, I'll tell you that.
In the light of that, how do you see Trump meeting Putin, that too on a former Soviet Indian land?
Trump, yeah, that's a good question, right? So what's the deal? They met in Alaska.
Yeah.
Alaska used to be part of the Russian Empire.
Yeah.
And in the 19th century, the Russian they sold it to the US, and it was considered by the Americans to be stupidity. Why did you buy this big piece of land? There's nothing there. Today you will see there's so many resources there. But anyhow, so they met in Alaska because it was a piece of land that belonged to Russia that was legally bought by the US. So the symbolism is that we can get along and all that sort of thing. So they met in Alaska. Now, why did they meet in Alaska? Why did Trump agree to meet Putin? And what was the whole thing behind this? So Trump is under tremendous pressure domestically. While he was campaigning for the presidency, he had made a promise to his people, to his voters, that the day I become the president, within 24 hours, I will end the Ukraine war. Okay, he had made the promise. It's been 6 months now? More than 6 months? What happened to his promise? He has been hamstrung. It's not happened at all. So he is under increasing pressure to end the Ukraine war some way or the other. So Putin knows that Trump is under pressure. So, and Trump had said that I'll meet with Putin and I'll make it happen. So now they finally met in Alaska. And the minimum Trump wanted, was a ceasefire in Ukraine. And see, so Trump is in a hurry to get something done. And Putin has the advantage on the map. He controls about a fifth of Ukraine, right? And his forces are in the ascendancy. The Ukrainian armed forces have been devastated. They've lost all their young men. So, and if he orders a big advance, or if he orders a bombing campaign by his strategic bombers, he can devastate Ukraine. So Putin has the advantage. He has the leverage on the ground in Ukraine. What leverage does Trump have? He can sanction Putin. He's already sanctioned Putin. They dumped every imaginable sanction on Russia. It makes no more difference to Russia. Their economy is still growing. So Putin was on the stronger side, and Trump was in the weaker side. So the minimum Trump wanted was a ceasefire, and he was in a hurry for this. Putin is willing to wait as long as it takes. He is in no hurry for things to change. So what happened at the end of the day in the meeting? Nothing. Nothing happened. Trump got nothing out of it. If you see the body language of the two leaders when they go into the meeting, they're all upbeat and happy. And when they come out, you can see very different body language. Putin is still strong and straight and smiling, and Trump is a little deflated.
What do you think they would have discussed?
Oh, we don't know what they discussed. I mean, there must have been threats. See, diplomacy is very interesting. What you see of diplomacy is what happens in front of the cameras. People being very polite, very formal, very sophisticated and all. But behind closed doors, diplomacy is all bullying, arm twisting and threats. That's what diplomacy is all about. It's about, I've got this leverage over you. I'm going to twist your arm until you break and cry and beg for mercy. That's how it goes in diplomacy. So the thing is, what can Putin threaten? What can Trump threaten Putin with? I'm not really sure he has anything to threaten Putin with. And Putin can threaten a lot. I will take over the whole of Ukraine. I'll take Poland next. What will you do? I'm just imagining. I'm not saying that actually happened. So there was a 2.5 hour discussion behind closed doors, and then when both sides come out, Trump is deflated, Putin is straight and is fine. And then there's an address to the media. And in the address to the media, Putin laid out his country's red lines very clearly. That whatever security arrangement happens in Europe, it has to take into consideration Russia's national interest. Without it, it will not work. He made it very clear in the address to the public. And I don't know what speech Trump gave to the media. Nothing of substance. So it is Putin 1, Trump 0. That's how it's emerged. Now there's going to be a next meeting, perhaps sometime maybe in Moscow.
As a student of history and geopolitics, how do you see this whole chronology of the events that have happened in the past, happening right now, starting from Nehru's time to even now Modi's time? How do you see this, and what is the lesson that we should learn from this when it comes to the India-US relationship?
See, history and geopolitics are completely interconnected. Yesterday's geopolitics is today's history. Today's history is today's geopolitics is tomorrow's history. And if you study history, you'll see that things happen in cycles. And you can see all the patterns. If you study more and more history, you will start seeing the patterns, and you will see that the same patterns are in play today. And that is geopolitics. Now, if you go back to Nehru's time, and if you look at the whole chronology of Indian history from that time to until now, you will see that the US did not ever pay too much attention to India in a negative sense, because India was nowhere close to fulfilling its potential in the past. That's why India was always regarded as a third-rate world power, and not really taken with much seriousness and not given much importance. But today you will see that India is facing the worst US economic coercion since 1947. Why is that? Because India has the potential to grow into the next China in the next 20-30 years if we get things right. India has this huge potential, a young population, educated population, so much energy and all that, but it's all being wasted and frittered away internally. If we get that right, then it's a big problem, because we're going to have a new China on the horizon for the US perspective. So if there's a new China that will rise, today the US already has an issue, there's a big problem, which is China's rise. China has become the second largest economy for a very long time, and they are competing with the US technologically. They are almost neck and neck now. That's a huge challenge for the US. Now, they don't want to see a new challenge like that come up again in the next 20 years, maybe in 20 years' time. India suddenly emerges and becomes a challenge for the US. So they want to contain India right now. And right now, because India, today the Indian economy is the only major economy that is projected to keep growing without any recession for the next 20 years. There's no chance, zero chance of recession. That's a problem. Even if we go at 6% per year, we're going to be a problem in 20 years. So they don't want that to happen. That's why they're creating all these problems for India. The Bangladesh situation, the Manipur situation, the Burma issue, the tariffs, all of that. So that India's growth rate goes down and maybe do a regime change in India.
And I guess that would be all from my side, Abhijit sir. I hope you had a great time.
I enjoyed talking to you.
It was insightful to discuss so many things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.